US lawmakers are hopeful they can reach an agreement on the country's debt ceiling as the clock ticks to stop the United States from defaulting on its debts. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has arrived at the US Capitol after Republican negotiators worked through the night to secure a draft containing the mechanics of a potential agreement. Mr McCarthy says he feels confident an agreement can be reached before the June 5 deadline, as the United States risks being unable to pay off its debts unless a decision can be made. Well, there's plenty on in the US, isn't there? The race is well and truly on ahead of the 2024 election. As we just heard, the debt ceiling crisis intensifies. Joining me live is Professor Stephen Fish from the University of California, Berkeley. Good morning and welcome to the program. What do you make of what's happening with the debt ceiling? June 5 is awfully close.
Well, you know, this is a game that the Republicans and Democrats play every year, and sometimes, and on certain years, it's more intense than others over the budget and whether to raise the debt ceiling. I'm actually pretty sure that this is going to happen. There's a lot of theater, a lot of posturing going on here, especially among the Republicans. But it looks like they're actually very close to an agreement. And both sides know what a catastrophe this would be. Now, of course, there are some lawmakers, and especially, unfortunately, among the Republicans, who would seek political gain from a default. In fact, Trump actually made it clear recently that that's exactly what they should do. They should just allow the government to default and blame the Democrats for it. But I think the cooler heads are going to prevail, and this deal will probably be done on time.
What do you make of the former president at the moment? Court cases, his polls, in the polls he's rising. What do you make of Donald Trump today?
What I make of him is that he is the greatest threat to democracy in the United States and in the world by extension, because what happens in America, of course, influences what happens everywhere else. The remarkable thing is that after all these years, the Democrats and Trump's opponents more broadly still have not figured out a way to pull him down. The Democrats habitually try to rely on offering more attractive policies. The Democratic Party and liberals more generally here in the States seem to think that they can counter Trump, and the Republicans more generally just by offering more attractive policies. Usually that means big spending bills, economic policies that will be appealing to people. What they don't realize is that elections are not about policies. People don't vote on policies. They vote on other things. They vote on which candidate they think is stronger, which candidate kind of owns the other side or dominates the other side. And it's high time for the Democrats to realize that's what's going on. Trump's key is that he quote unquote owns his political opponents. He looks very strong. He looks dominant. He breaks norms, which makes him look kind of honest and intrepid. The Democrats are going to have to adjust to that and kind of overmatch his dominant style rather than just trying to offer better policies. We can see that actually hasn't worked so far.
Joe Biden, he's 80 years old. And you talk to anyone who is close to politics, or you look at the history of American politics, he's always been fantastic behind closed doors, in brinkmanship, in discussions one-on-one. But on the public stage, travelling around the world, he's looking more and more frail.
You know, if you actually listen to what Biden says and look at his policies and look at the factors that you mentioned, how he operates behind closed doors, there's no real sign that he's deteriorating in cognitive terms. In fact, he seems sharper than ever. He's always, if you listen to him speak, and sometimes he kind of runs his words together, he's always done that. If you actually look back at his speech 40 years ago when he was, half his age today, he did the same thing for the most part. The problem is that the Democratic Party and Biden himself are not getting out front in messaging just how alert he is and just how good a politician he is. If you look at the policies he's put through and you look at what he does, for example, to control the threat from Putin, he's united the whole democratic world behind this effort to save Ukraine and to save European security from Putin's predations. Similarly, at home, he has pushed through bills that amount to, in their scale and scope, really they have the scale and scope of President Johnson's Great Society programs from the 1960s. These are big, game-changing economic programs that Biden has pushed through. And if you listen to him carefully, there's no sign that he's losing his marbles, right? The problem is that he's old, he looks old, he moves old, but that doesn't really matter all that much as long as his brain is functioning reasonably well. And I think rather than act defensively when he's accused of being too old for the job, which is what Biden typically does, he should use humor. He should use a bit of self-effacing humor. He should also use humor against his opponents. You know, Trump is only a few years younger than Biden, and he's not in nearly as good a shape as Biden is physically. And that's something that Biden could point out. Unfortunately, so far, though, his responses to this have been defensive. And Democrats are whispering behind the scenes, maybe he's too old. Of course, he's not too old. You just need to get behind him.
Yeah, perception is reality, isn't it? It's interesting. Yeah. All it would take is a little bit of a twist, and you know, I think humor is an amazing message tool. Absolutely. That a lot of people do not use. Now, two Republican candidates, Ron DeSantis and Tim Scott, both now in the race.
Well, DeSantis is the only guy who has a shot at beating Trump. And the reason is that he, like Trump, is a high dominance politics guy, right? He specializes in owning the libs, you know, which dominating the liberals in his state of Florida. The problem with DeSantis is that he shows no ability or inclination to own Trump. And if you want to come to the top of the Republican tribe, you're basically going to have to show that you're a tougher guy. You're a stronger guy than Trump is. Trump is nothing but a charging alpha chimp. All he has going for him is this kind of primitive dominance. And the only way to dethrone this guy, it's not going to be offering more conservative economic policies or more conservative cultural policies, which is what DeSantis is doing right now. You're going to have to attack him directly. So far, DeSantis has shown that he's really quite craven. He's not willing to actually go after Trump because he's afraid he's going to offend some Trump supporters. That's not the way to get the Republican nomination. Tim Scott is a different kind of animal. He is not the same kind of crazy that Trump and DeSantis is. He's, at least in his personality and his kind of approach to politics in general, is a little closer to the mainstream. He's very intelligent. I don't think he has any shot at the nomination because he's not really what Republicans are looking for. I will say this, though, if he did get the nomination, he would be a much more formidable opponent for Joe Biden than Trump or probably DeSantis would be, because he is actually much more appealing to mainstream voters. But I don't think there's any danger that the Republicans are going to nominate him. He's not crazy enough.
It's a very interesting look at what the Republican Party is in 2023. Professor, great to have you on the program. Look forward to chatting soon.
My pleasure, Tim.